Man, I've been following your stuff for a while now. I actually don't know how long you've been doing it for since I caught on, but I kind of enjoy all your kind of analytic work, and I'm a footy head just like yourself, and so I've been following what you've been doing for a minute now, and yeah, man, just I guess with just with my podcast and what I try basically these platforms, just I try to tap into, I guess, different people from our culture, Australian culture, whether it's just sports, whatever it is, but just people doing some cool stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I just wanted to, I guess, just have a chat to you, and just to get a little bit about, I guess, what really got you into, more so than just being a footy fan, but just into, doing the extras that you do with Clarkey's Column. And I just found out yesterday you had a podcast and all that too, just by, I was just looking at some of the stuff, and I noticed that you had a few other things as
Oh,
well,
yeah.
right? You got a podcast and you got something else. You're doing some graphic work as well, I think, or some.
Yeah. I branched out onto podcasts. It was a few years ago now. I haven't uploaded to the one in particular. I've started doing a weekly segment with another company at the moment, which has been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Um, but it all comes down to like time management. Like when you
Mm.
have a passion and a side hobby and something you love, you got to really find that balance.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
sometimes if you can get too excited and take too much on. And I think
Mm.
that's what I did with the podcasts and the YouTube videos and all that. Particularly because my last job was shift work. So it was 5 on, 5 off. So I
Yeah,
had the
yeah.
5 days there to, just grind and get it all ready. But now working, usual job Monday to Friday,
Mm.
makes it so much more difficult
It
now.
is, isn't it? Yeah. Like I used to I used to try to shove all my podcasts on a Sunday or something, but then I realized or even like I do some video content. So the whole like Messenger Entertainment as a platform, obviously I try to do like short documentaries. I work with a lot of athletes. So my background, like I did a lot of, like I've been doing kickboxing and boxing. And so I've been able to connect with a lot of athletes. I try to do some promo videos for them and, things like that. And yeah, man, after a while I find out you know, it was hard for me to balance everything because not everyone's free on a weekend either, right? So it's
Yeah,
like,
right.
weeknight after work, I got to go drive, 40 minutes, 45 minutes, wherever it is, and get it done, come home. And yeah, so I've had to adjust that a little bit because, yeah, it's after a while, it's too hard to put everything on over like 2 days, you know what I mean? Because everyone's busy as well. So, tell me a little bit about Clarkey's Column, man, like how that kind of came about and I'm sure, obviously you could tell it comes off the back of passion, but what drove you down that path of wanting to kind of get into that analytic work? Because I think it's pretty dope. I mean, it's not just, I find you dive much deeper too, and you do a lot of other cool things that I've mentioned to people, which I like is, I think one of the most recent ones I liked is you took a lot of the off contract players and made a team out of them and said, oh, a lot of the off
Yeah.
play. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the passion side of it and what drove you down to wanting to do that, man.
Yeah. So I've always sort of loved footy, played
Mm.
it my whole life. And it would have been, I was in year 12 and I started to realize I was pretty good at writing, got really good like remarks from my teachers and stuff with all my written work. And I noticed that at the time on Facebook, there was nowhere to just get your NRL news straight to your news feed. Now, keep in
Mm.
mind, this is 5 years ago. So now there's lots of different pages. But back then, there really wasn't many. I can only really think of one that's still prominent to this day. I believe it's the Rugby League report on Facebook.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so what you would have is a bunch of websites posting directly to Facebook saying, pretty much like the Titans have re-signed a star player. Click here to find out who. And so you were being dragged away from Facebook to a website, and then you'd have all these ads everywhere. And then you'd finally scroll and you'd get to see who the player was. And I
Mm.
noticed in the comments section, everyone was doing this thing, hashtag save a click. And so what they were doing was going to the article, seeing who the player was or what the clickbait was, and just putting it in the comments. And then that sort of gave me an idea. I saw there was a gap in the market. So what I started doing was just getting a photo of the player, outsourcing all different websites, and just writing that information in my own words
Mm.
and uploading it directly to Facebook. And
Mm.
it would have taken, I think it was probably like the first 4 months. I legit remember like people laughing at me, like, why are you bothering at school and stuff, mates giving me banter, because I was only getting like 1 or 2 likes per post.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
And so I came up with this great idea that I was going to spam Fox Sports in the comment section. And what I did was I commented like, I've just found this really great, because it was NRL rumors and updates at that time. It wasn't Clarkey's column, so people wouldn't have got the last name and connected the dots. So I said,
All right.
I
Oh,
found
so
this
so
really
that was
great.
your page, that
Yeah,
rumors, oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to change that because the NRL asked eventually. They said you're starting to get a bit, looking pretty official, but you don't actually represent us. Would you mind changing your name? And I was like, yeah, that's fine. Like, no worries. Always sort of envisioned Clarkey's column being like a column in the newspaper or something anyway.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
I had no dramas there. Where was I with this story?
Just Clarkey's column and just how you came up, spamming. You was originally spamming all the comment
Right.
sections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was slamming the comment section.
Yeah.
Check out this awesome footy page. And I woke up the next day with 2,000 likes. And I was like, oh my God. And then that's how it sort of started. Everything just started snowballing, getting slowly larger and larger. And, but yeah, it was a grand plan. It paid
Yeah.
off.
I think
But it was
as
a
well,
lot of
like
hard
you
work.
said, it's that whole clickbait. Like people generally have to click to go into the article, whereas a lot of your stuff is smacks you right in front of your face the second you see it, right? Like whether it's the
Yeah.
stats or post game stats, run meters on certain players and whatnot. You kind of get to see it straight away, as opposed to having to click go into the article and then and that's just not with that. That's with a lot of reports in whatever industry it is. I think that's what pisses people off a lot, is that the heading drives you in, and then you go into the article and sometimes you find out it's not even
Yeah.
what it is, essentially it's like a clickbait, essentially, just to get you in there. But that's pretty dope. And then so you were talking a little bit about outsourcing. So you generally, with all your information, you try to kind of look at all different resources in rugby league when you're compiling I guess your stuff, like your stats, and when you're putting everything together, your reports.
Yeah, definitely. So
Yeah.
mainly with reporting it, was a stage there where I liked to sort of try to get my own reports. So it was reaching out to players, managers, but it's very, very time consuming. And from what I learned over that year, almost impossible to maintain. Like you're just flat out, you're waiting for replies, you're bugging people. So what you'll notice with a lot of my stuff now is I'll just outsource from the Daily Telegraph, the NRL website, Fox Sports. And I'll never plagiarize. You'll always see, according to, and I'll tell you
like giving
that
credit.
information.
Yeah.
Exactly right. And then I'll just shape the rest of the article or the column around interesting parts. So, for example, Fox Sports just before, they reported Josh Maguire's been axed from Origin. Scrolled through the article, had a read. I put that up, and then just for my own little twist, I went through and researched his stats this year, put up what he was averaging per game, and then just put my own little spin saying, I think he's been pretty good this year. What do you guys think? And that's sort of how I'm molding my content at the moment, because it's important to note that I don't get paid from any of this. I don't make money from this, but I put hours in every day. But for me, instead of looking at a post or a column and going, oh, I made $50 from that, or I made 100, I don't value my work on that. I value it on the amount of likes in the comments. So I know if something gets comments, then I've done a good job there. I provided content for people, and then I'll do my best to go through the comments and reply to people where I can.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely. I think it's more so that people get a good understanding of the game as well, with all the stats that you put up, and just the if it's a particular player that's played really well, and man of the match, and just the run meters, and try assist and whatever it is, just being able to see it straight away. People know, oh man, he had it. Because the funny thing is, I always find if you're a footy fan and you're watching the footy, and take any game, for example, take the Rabbitohs and the Knights on Sunday. For me, the man of the match, funny enough, in my eyes, was Damien Cook, as opposed to Cody Walker. I thought, but everyone has a different perception of who played really well in that game, right? For me, Cook just stood out, right? He just stood out. Maybe because I see Cody Walker playing really well all the time. But Damien Cook, I just felt like was that extra gear that day. He just made the big difference. But then when you see the stats, it's funny because you look at it and you think, oh, wow, like, your perception of who was playing really well does stand out because the stats back it up. But you just don't know the run meters, and you just don't know the exact numbers behind it, So, so like, is this, yeah, I mean, I think it's great. I mean, you were touching on it a little bit earlier about how there wasn't much ample information or things to do with rugby league when it came to this. And I just find the difference with what you do as opposed to any, like, even with going and reading an article on Fox Sports or Daily Telegraph, is the interaction. It's very interactive, and that's what kind of really stood out for me, was that, you know, it drew you in. You wanted to kind of discuss what's going on based on all the stats you had put up, and, you know, comparing players, or like you said, you would pose a question based on, you know, one of your posts, and I just found the difference was that it was very interactive. It would want you to engage with it, and it's something that I've never seen before. And, you know, I'm not saying that I've seen it all, but I've just never really seen that. And I know as a rugby league head, I really appreciate it, because it's just good to know those things, you know, and generally people don't really sometimes might not go out of their way to go see certain stats and see, oh, how well did this person did, you know, they're just happy to, they're just happy if their team won, you know what I mean? And it's like, whatever. But um, tell me a little bit about, I mean, let's talk about the footy season, man. What do you think of it so far? What are your thoughts of it so far? And shout out to Gold Coast too, man. I mean, they're slowly becoming like one of my little, my favorite, you know, at least my favorite third team.
Yeah.
You know, and it was good to see. I was doing like backflips when we signed Ryan James, and people like, who Ryan James? And then I saw you posting a lot about appreciating who he was as a player and how much of a loss he's going to be, and that just kind of solidified my thoughts of how big of a player he is. And I always tell people it's good for a change, that especially being a Raiders fan, I've seen them in the dumps for so long, like so long. And you know, and then, you know, obviously they've had, you know, little breakout seasons, but never consistently kind of backed it up the year after. And you know, wanting to see good players come to the club, it just kind of showed me that where we're at, like, you know, where the Raiders are at as a club as well. But Ryan James, like, when he, you know, I rate him very highly, even before he came to the, you know, before this whole thing with him moving to Canberra. I rated him as a player. And tell me a little bit about your thoughts on the 2020 season, man. Does the top 8 kind of look like what you expected it to look at the start of the season, or is there any kind of shocking, is there any, like, you know, teams there that you didn't kind of expect to be there at all, or?
Yeah, probably the Panthers. I didn't expect them to only lose one game all year in the regular season. I thought that they were a good chance of making the 8 in the preseason, but I think for anyone to say they had them as the minor premiers and to almost go undefeated, I don't think many people could have predicted that, because there's so many players on their team that have just gone to new levels this year. They're playing as a full unit, and like with Nathan Cleary playing well, that's rising Jerome Luai to a new level. Then you look at their depth, like Charlie Staines, for example, 5 tries on debut, and he can't be a regular in their side.
Yeah.
There's crazy depth for this team right now. They're on fire. And probably the other end of the scale, the biggest surprise for me was Manly. Obviously, you can never predict an injury, and therefore I wouldn't have tipped Tom Trbojevic to go down like he did, particularly with how tough of a season he had in 2019. I thought he'd overcome all that, and he was really going to come on fire this year. I thought he was going to win the Dally M medal potentially. We definitely thought he'd be the best fullback in the game by the end of this year. Now,
because a lot of people had them as a dark horse as well, for this season, Manly.
Yeah. Well, you look at last year; it was really injury that decimated their season, and 2020 is very much the same story for them. Unfortunately, they can't get a break.
Yeah, and what do you think that with the travel schedule that a lot of teams had to kind of endure this year, you know, with the same day flying in, flying out, and whatnot, do you think that had a massive impact in terms of, like, obviously teams in Sydney, especially Parramatta, Penrith, and probably a couple others had, even with their away games, were in Bankwest as well, so they really didn't have to travel as much? And do you think that played a big part in some advantages for teams as opposed to a lot of the other temes?
I don't think it would have played too big of an advantage, because whilst they were doing reduced travel, they didn't have the fans there. So that takes away a big element of the home ground advantage, fans being loud and potentially influencing referees to blow penalties or switch momentum, etc. Or even just the boost of the players being able to hear their fans. So I don't think it necessarily played a role too much, but I think it will be interesting next year, because, you know, for however long it's been, teams have flown down a few days before. They've had their captains run there. Then they might, you know, play on the Gold Coast and come back to Sydney the day after. now it's a genuine option for teams to just literally fly in and fly out on the same day, because they've had to do it. They didn't have a choice. And now I wonder how many coaches and managers will look at that and go, yeah, that actually suits us better than being up there for a few days. So it'll be interesting to see how many teams continue that.
Because I guess you end up, I guess, learning how to prepare for it, right? And then therefore, like next year, you know how you prepared for it, and you can probably fine tune a little things, but essentially they've figured out how to prepare for it because they've been forced to prepare for it that way as well this year. So, like you said, yeah, it may change because, yeah, it was just a question that I always, I was just thinking about all season. I was just wondering whether that would have made a big difference at all, but I always wanted to, have that conversation and just, especially with yourself. Obviously, I had all these things that I wanted to kind of, pose my questions to you and get your thoughts on it. But how do you see this season going, man?
Yeah, I think Penrith, Penrith and Storm, I mean, whichever team faces them in the prelims,
it's going to be tough,
so tough, because these two teams fully rested is just
even more dangerous.
It's dangerous, yeah. Like you think this Roosters and Raiders game that's coming up this weekend, it's literally a grand final rematch. There's an element of intensity that's going to be attached to that no player will be coming out 100% the very next week. Yeah. And I feel like if you're not 100% against the Storm or the Panthers this year, you're not going to win because most teams need to be at 110% at the moment.
Yeah,
to get over those heavyweights.
That's what I was saying to somebody. I was like, man, I would love for like my boys to get over the Roosters on Friday, but it's going to be a very tough ask to fly into Suncorp and beat a fresh Storm, in Suncorp as well. So, I think traveling to, well, from what I've heard, Penrith have or may opt to play in ANZ instead of Bank West, their prelim final, something I read a couple of days ago. Whether there's any truth to it, I don't know, but obviously there was an article saying that they're considering it. Whoever wins out of the Rabbits and Para, I think, even though they're playing a fresh Penrith, not having to fly into another state on a day to go, get prepared for a game is, I think, much better than having to. So, obviously whoever wins on Friday is going to have to play the Storm. And then obviously whoever plays on Saturday is going to play the Panthers. But yeah, you'd like to defy the odds, but especially when it gets to this point, you can really tell why you need that 1 week off as well, just before the grand final, the GF, the big one. So, who's kind of been standouts for you, or you reckon has let's start with Gold Coast, man. Let's go down to your backyard. Your team. Like, how have you assessed their season so far this year? Like, I've been very impressed, and I was actually having this conversation with all my rugby league circle, as we all do. We have a rugby league circle, and I was telling him it's so funny that I just feel like you get the right people in there, and not even just players. I mean, Meninga being for one, but Holbrook, and just that little attitude change just changes the whole fucking dynamic of a team, man. Like, there's no anyone any different. Yeah, there's a couple of players, but there's no anyone any different that hasn't been there before in the team. But it's just that camaraderie and that just playing for each other, that just comes from attitude, man, and it just shows you if you have the right people there, they can bring the best out of your players. And Titans were on fucking fire, man, at the back end of the season. It was just unbelievable. And, and I know you're a massive fan. And what was your thoughts on it, man? Like, it must be pretty exciting. There's a few players coming next year as well. And, they look like they built a really good foundation this year.
Excellent foundation. We finished the season with 5 wins in a row, which is only the second time in our club's history. You got to keep in mind, like, we've only been around for 13 years. So, the second time in 13 years ago, I was in year 5 sitting in a classroom, just for some context of how long I've waited to actually see 5 wins in a row again. It's crazy. And you got to celebrate the small wins when you're an up and coming team. We won the wooden spoon last year, and I think a lot of people thought we'd just be down the bottom again this year, wooden spooners. And even I thought that we'd probably be around that bottom 4. I thought we'd start to lay some sort of foundation. But we've laid a really, really great foundation. I mean, we'll come into the 2021 season riding a 5-game win streak with players like Herman Sasa, Tino, I'm not going to try and pronounce his last name, but Tino F from the Melbourne Storm, and Dave. Like, those are three great players that will add a ton of spark to our side. If you're a Titans fan right now and you're not excited, then you got to be kidding yourself. Like, I think our memberships are going to spike. I can really see us pushing towards that top 8 next year. I really can.
I actually think you guys will be thereabouts in that top 8 spot. I really do. I think, and it just amazes me. It always amazes me. I mean, look, I've watched it. Like I said, I've seen, like, so when I came in 90, I came from my home country in 96, and all my cousins that lived in Sydney, they were all Raiders fans. That's how I jumped on board. I was just like, fuck, who do I support? I'll just support what these guys support. And then they kind of dropped off watching footy, but then I just got deeper and deeper into watching footy. And so I've, like, kind of seen the ups and downs, like, of, like, all the seasons. So, but then I remember you know what game really stood out for me, man? It would have been a couple of years ago. I don't know if it was the 2016 season when we lost to Melbourne in the prelims, or not the prelims. It would have been just the one before the prelims, I think it was. And there was a game against the Sharkies, I think, in the back end of the season. And, you know, when you've seen a team struggle so much and then you start to pick up the little things of what they're doing really well, and I just remember their defensive line and the way they just all were shoulder to shoulder, and the way they were just moving in a line. And I thought, fuck, I used to dream about watching these guys play like this, because obviously, like, I came in 96, man, so I missed the whole golden era. So I've never seen them win a premiership. I've had to go back and watch the 89, 90, when I came, that's all I heard about, right? So I've never seen them win a premiership, and I've missed that whole golden era of where they were very dominant as well. So, I can appreciate it more now, seeing where they've come from the front office to just the structure of the club to just the youth as well. You would have seen this season a lot of the backup players who've been able to kind of step up and, play a big part in the team with all the injuries and whatnot. So, but yeah, so where do you kind of, one of the questions I want to ask you as well, man, which was pretty controversial at the time, was when I remember this because everyone was on it about it, was when the season launch video came out, and then you obviously had some thoughts about politics and sport, and I remember going on your feed, and fuck, I was like, this guy, everyone's just coming left, right, etc. about it, but everyone had different thoughts. But the beautiful thing about you, man, I really admire it, is that you engage in a normal conversation, man. You're not like, oh, this is how I feel, or this is what I think, and that's it. You're very open to criticism, and you accept everyone's different answers. And I really like the way that you had responded to a lot of people on IG, because you were very considerate, but you're very understanding. And I like that, because a lot of people, when they're set on stone on certain things, man, they just think that way, But I find with you, you're very open to different criticism, or even just different people's opinions, even if it doesn't match and align with yours. And I guess with a platform like yours, you have to be as well, right? Like, you can't just think one way. But what was your thoughts on that? What, like, after you had provided your thoughts and got to kind of get a little bit of feedback and responses from people that follow you and your platform, what were kind of your thoughts and your standing on all of that? Did you have a different understanding? Did you have a different perspective? Did you get an understanding of why people may have, been upset about it, or thought differently in terms of, the whole idea of politics and sports? Like, what were your thoughts after you kind of engaged with it? And then, what was your perspective after that, as opposed to going in and giving your thoughts initially?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's actually something that no one's really touched on with me since the video. So it shows you how closely I watch you, bro. Yeah, definitely. That sort of just went up, and it went away after a while. But the way it went was, I I'm never scared to share my opinion. And I know that when you share your opinion on the internet, backlash comes from that. And as a result, I've sort of steered more into only sharing my opinion as far as football matters are concerned and not off-field incidents. So with that video, I shared what at the time I thought was right, what the time I thought was my opinion. But then I had a few people come back to me and say, like, hey, this video was offensive because of X, Y, and Z. And as you say, like, I don't fight fire with fire. I ask people questions and I understand where they're coming from, whether it's like you say, like it was social issues or political issues like that, even to like, should this player have been dropped? Here's why you think he should. Here's why I think he shouldn't. So I always understand and listen where other people are coming from. And so a few people came to me and said like, hey, this video is offensive for X, Y, and Z. And because I was able to understand their point of view and how they feel, it sort of helped me see the whole picture and not just the tunnel vision of what was my opinion at the time. So I think, like you say, that's very important. If you're going to share your opinion on anything, it can't be your way or the highway. You have to be open to what other people have to say. Because if you're not, what's the point? I mean, why share your opinion? If you're so tunnel vision and narrowed on your own opinion and you're not open to learning or hearing what other people have to say, then there's no point in sharing your opinion in the first place. And so that was a strange incident. I wouldn't say it's one I regret, but it's one that I look back on and think maybe I shouldn't have pushed the send on that one, just because people were offended, and obviously that wasn't my intention. And so I went back and I apologized to the majority of people that I offended in that video. And they've all since said, hey, we forgive you. We understand where you're coming from. And I say, that's cool. I understand where you're coming from. And we settled it like gentlemen and we moved on, which I think was also very important learning curve from all of that. So, yeah, great question, though. A lot of people, I don't know, a lot of people have never asked that.
No, because it was something that stood out for me, man. And it was something that I found interesting because regardless of whether we want to mix politics with sport, it's always going to be there, it's always going to be there. And somehow people are going to always try to link it up, and it was just, I found that it was such a powerful moment because it was a conversation that I guess, outside of like, the rugby league, like the kind of the commercial heads, the ones that sit around the tables, and us at ground level as supporters and as a community, we needed to have that conversation. Like, fuck what the papers and all that had to say. Like me, you, the guys on the platform, and like all of us needed to have that conversation because we're the core fan group, right? We're the pure fans, man. We're the ones that love the sport and support the sport, right? So it was really good to have that conversation because obviously like even for me, when I saw you did that, I was thinking to myself, I knew end of the day you were gonna get some people coming at you. I knew that because I've seen it time and time again. And me being from a migrant background, I could see why people get that hurt. But I also thought that you opened up a dialogue that was worth it because end of the day, by you I guess expressing what your thoughts were, you did exactly what we needed to do, which was open a dialogue. Let's just have a chat. Like, no one's here to say, hey, fuck your opinion or, you're wrong. It's just, let's have a conversation. Like, let's just have a conversation because end of the day, when I look at you or when you look at me, you don't look at my skin color. You just look at, hey, this guy's a Raiders fan or this guy loves footy just like I do, man. And that's kind of what we share. We don't share any, like, you know what I mean? We don't look at anything else. So I could see where you were coming from because in your eyes, you don't see it that way. When you see rugby league fans, you see rugby league fans, you know what I mean? And I think for some other people, because their experiences are different, they probably in their eyes is like, well, that's not how we see it, or that's, and that's not what kind of we deal with, and so I think it was a great conversation to have, but I'm glad it was a conversation that happened with, I guess, people like us, if I had to say it that way, just people like us, because, media and all that can say whatever they want. And, they all, I'm not saying that it's not pure, the intentions aren't pure, but I just think that end of the day, there's always different facets influencing the media, right? In terms of how they provide the information and what responses they give, whereas opposed to, for us, people like us, the community, it's so raw. It's so raw when we share our emotions and talk about it and whatnot. So it really stood out for me. And from that moment, I always told myself I was going to ask you this question because, you know, I was really interested to see what the, you know, post all of that came, like what came out of that, just not for you, but like just in general, what, you know, what the thoughts were and what were some of the responses that you had got. Do you, but yeah, like, yeah, that's awesome. And that's a great answer, by the way, man. I didn't even get to, yeah, congratulate. I think that was a good, you know, and I commend you for that because, these conversations need to happen, man. And I think if you didn't say anything, then, you know, I don't think we would have had that conversation, to be honest, anyway, on your platform anyway. But
Definitely.
what are your thoughts on just with the a lot of, I guess, every season it's always something to do with the, I guess, officiating and whatnot, right? Every season we're always having a bitch about it. What are your thoughts on the officiating this season and with the rule changes with the six again, and with, you know, with some of those new additions to footy now? I know that we saw, you know, there's been some controversials, I guess, you know, with the, you know, even with the bunker and just, you know, with some of the decision making. Like, what are your thoughts on the officiating like this season and even just with some of the rule changes, bro?
Yeah, I think the officiating's been at a pretty fair standard, but as you say, it's one of those things that
Yeah.
if you know, a team could make 10 errors and miss 20 tackles in a game, but if the referee makes one error,
Yeah,
then it's all his fault. So it's one of those interesting ones. But I really like the six again rule. But I am worried that with this six again rule and the intent to reduce the interchange, we've already seen a bulk of injuries this year, and long-term like medial knee ligament injuries, ACLs, MCLs, all long-term injuries. And I have to wonder if that's due to the break at the start of the year because of COVID or the sped up play style. Obviously, we'll have a bit more of a clearer picture on that in 2021. But I have to wonder with the whole intent to keep changing the rules to speed up the game of rugby league. Vlandis is now touching on potentially removing the scrum. How much fitter and how much stronger can NRL players actually get? I think as fans, we might not necessarily realize the torture these guys go through in preseason to get to that standard, and they're still getting injured. So if we keep making it faster and then therefore there's more fatigue, so there's less technique in tackles, etc., I think it's going to eventually lead to a massive spike in injuries. And it could even end up in a situation where the Rugby League Players Association has to get involved and say, hey, you have to change some of these rules because we're just like having too many of our boys go down injured. So that's as far as I'll go with the rule changes. But I do like the six again. It's sped up the rule, and I can't wait to see it in Origin. But for the referees, obviously the bunkers, like, I just don't understand how they miss so many decisions that we can see at home, and we have one camera angle available, and they're in a state-of-the-art studio with 50 tellies with every angle, and they still miss it somehow. So I don't understand what goes on in there. If there's two people, fair enough, one person might make a mistake, but surely then the second guy's going, hey, hold on, man, his foot's out. Like, you can see right there, he stepped out, and they go, oh yeah, you're right, it's no try. But I just don't see how two people in the same bunker, and they've changed it to one now. But I don't see before how two people could get some of these calls wrong.
Yeah. Given the amount of money and
strange.
technology, right? Like you said, at home with one screen, we have the ability to see certain things, and we're like, oh yeah, you can see it quite clearly, right? And then you got a bunker where their whole job is just to review these things on like these massive fucking TVs, like, you know, and they can't do it, and and that's why I feel like there's always these, you know, you got all these people with this conspiracy theories of, like, you know, it's fixed, and that's where it all comes from, you know, that they're influencing the game, because it's like they're in so much disbelief that clearly, like, how can you miss these things? And clearly, if you are and you're making these errors or you're doing it, it must be on purpose, or there's some sort of influence, right? So people might sit there and think, oh man, you're just fucking thinking crazy. But I don't blame them for thinking that way sometimes too, because you're like, it's so some of these things are so obvious, you know what I mean? And then I guess what pisses them off is that sometimes where you feel like a ref should make a decision or let the ref flow the game, they've got in the ref's ear and said, nah, you know, whether it's, you know, obviously the controversial 6 again call in grand final last year,
Right.
you know, which, you know, I was there. It was the worst trip back home. But, you know, they just kind of influence the ref's decision as well. And you're like thinking, well, dude, like you're getting calls where we solely dependent on you guys to get the call right. And then when there's other things where the refs should kind of let the game flow or whatever, and they, you know, obviously bark some orders and said, nah, this happened or that happened. And they've just kind of changed it, you know, mid-game as the game's flowing. So I think, I don't know. I mean, I do agree with the fact that I think the ref like should, unless it's a really, really big call or a break of play where the bunker can kind of have a chat to the ref and say, or you know, go back and have a look at this or whatever. But when the game's flowing, I think it would be quite annoying. Like as just general human beings, if like me and you are talking right now and someone's barking in your ear, it's going to be annoying. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
You know, so let alone an intense pressure game, right? A game that's, you know, at 100 kilometers an hour, and then you got someone at the same time talking to you, like it'd be fucking frustrating, man, you know, and you're trying to do your job and then you got someone else telling you, you know, that, hey, this happened or that happened or whatever. So I think that aspect of it, needs to change. I think if you're on the field, unless it's big calls or break a play where you have an element of being able to talk to someone, that's fine. But when the game's flowing and I think the ref should, like, end of the day, you're not going to get the calls right, and the refs are probably still going to make a mistake. But I think we just need to accept the fact that referees are human beings, man. You know, it's easy for all of us to sit at home, watch TV, and fucking say, "Hey, you missed that." But we're not on the
Right.
field. We're not on the field trying to keep up, you know, and
Mhm.
make decisions at the same time, and you know, and all that. So, you know, I just find that interesting. But yeah, the bunker for me. Man, it sounded amazing when they first announced it. Thought, oh, fuck yeah, we're gonna get, you know, but it'll always be something else, Clarky. You know, if it's not one thing, it'll be something else. That's the problem, right? Like sometimes we're almost looking for problems, and that's the one thing I hate with the slow-mo as well when they're doing it. It's like it's fucking obvious, right? But that
Yeah.
it's a try or whatever. But it's almost you start to get nervous because you're like, are these guys looking for something to be wrong? Like, you know what I mean? Like they slow it down so much that it's like they're looking for something to be wrong. And but I'm sure the players wouldn't mind because, like you said, man, with the 6 again rule and whatnot, it's so fast right now. They'll
Right.
just take any break they can, any break they can, you know, to get to, you know, just get their breath back. But yeah, like with with Clarkey's column, like what's kind of your overall vision for it, man? I know that you say you didn't get paid for it, but I see great things, man. I really do. I think it's amazing what you do, and I think that's what kind of, you know, wanted me to kind of reach out to you and have a chat to you as well, was because I think we need that. And you know, and where do you kind of foresee that going in a scale? Is it something you just want to keep working on and seeing what you can do with it in terms of even being able to hopefully make something of it, monetize it one day and, you know, make it something? Or is it just purely passion? Or
Yeah.
you know, where do you kind of see it going?
Yeah, it's purely passion at this stage. I
Yeah,
used to think that I'd like to be a journalist, but
yeah.
I'm at the stage now where I'm young. I've set myself up very well
Mm,
financially, and to go back to university and study for 4 years and work part time would like it would require a massive lifestyle change for myself
mm,
in terms of assets, investments, etc. So it's not
mm,
really a possibility to. I mean, it would be, but my passion isn't overall driving me to make significant changes to myself and my partner's life to pursue that through studying for 4 years. So what I'm at the moment is I just want to keep growing, and I
mm,
want to get to a stage where I can monetize my content purely for charity. I want to
mm,
get to a stage where Like at the moment, an idea I have, I've got a Patreon set up, and I don't have too many subscribers to it at the moment, but I want to get it to the stage where I've got it set up so it's $1 per month, which I don't think a lot of people would notice coming out of their bank account per se. But if I can convince 1,000 fans that I'm worth $1 per month and I can get them to sign up, then that's $1,000 I have a month to donate to charities, to do giveaways, to help people that follow my page that are doing it tough and need a hand, etc. So that's really where I want to get the page, man. I want to get it to a point large enough where I can monetize and support charities. And by following my passion and doing something I love, I know that I'm doing something else great for the world. So that's sort of where I'm at, man. It's money doesn't motivate me as far as this stuff concerned. Absolutely love footy. Absolutely love creating content. So if I can support charities through that, then that's just an absolute bonus. But I've still got a lot of hard work to get to that stage. So that's where I'm working towards.
That's awesome, man. And with Origin, I guess not too far away as well. I've noticed that you've kind of had, especially with the Queensland team, you've had your thoughts on what the team looks like. And I noticed there was a lot of players that are kind of missing from the yesteryears as well. You've kind of thrown your hat at a lot of the new breeds. Is that how you see it, and is that how you think it should go for Queensland moving forward now? Is to start kind of throwing your hat at some of these guys that have, in your eyes, that believe that they should be there in terms of kind of creating the next core of the dynasty?
I definitely think that's what they need to do. You look at like the Blues in 2018, they came in and I think they were calling them the Baby Blues or Freddie's Baby Blues, whatever. I think that was the terminology used. That's what the Maroons need to do. It worked for the Blues because they had so much enthusiasm and energy coming into the game. I think if the Maroons were to lean on their veterans, players like your Joe Offahen, not really a veteran, but like, for example, players that have been there before, like Joe Offahen-Gowie's, Dylan Narpers, Josh Maguire's, etc. If they're to lean on the older core and the older breed, I don't think that will be enough to defeat the Blues. The Blues, I think if you compare both their teams or both their squads or who we think will be selected on paper, then it's fairly obvious the Blues have the stronger team and they have better depth. Therefore, Queensland need to try something. And if there's a coach in NRL history that's been able to have young players and have them perform out of their skin and have them perform, it's Wayne Bennett. He did it with Jaden Stewart this year at South. He did it with Junior Totola there. The Broncos, he did it with Fafita and Haas. He has a track record of doing this. So if the Maroons are going to bring in all these young guys that have so much energy and so much want to represent their state and get out there and debut for Origin, and Wayne Bennett in their corner, that's Queensland's biggest chance.
Yeah, because one of my really good mates, he's a diehard Rabbitoh supporter. He's old fella. He's in his 60s now, and I actually told him, I said, you should follow Clarkey's column because he loves watching, like looking at rugby league stats, and he actually stopped watching footy when the Rabbits were out of the league as well. That's how much he loved his. That's how much he loved his Rabbits, mate. So he was there on Sunday afternoon, and I was telling him, I said, man, like what's really impressing me about you guys this season is your edge attack. Like, man, that play that Reynolds put Cody Walker through, I almost felt back on my seat because I was like, such a nice set play. But I said, your attack just looks really, really good, especially on the edges. But the one thing I said to him, I said, man, it's something about a Bennett team. When the finals fever comes around, you can almost guarantee he'll get his team up. Like he'll just get his team up competing, at least competing, which is what you want, right? And I think, and like you said, I think, with Queensland, if they're ever going to start blooding in and getting some youth in there, you want it with a guy like Bennett at the helm, who will just, I don't know what it is, but whether it's just he simplifies their role and gets them just doing the simple things right. I don't know what it is that he has on him, but whatever it is, man, it's some secret sauce that he, that he has the ability to just get people up. But and a lot of people have also been discussing about Origin, bro, and where it should be. Do you still believe it should be mid-season? Like with the schedule? Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, it's important to note that even like Kalen Ponga now has been playing with a shoulder injury for most of this year. So he's in a situation now where either way, the Knights, I don't see them allowing him to play Origin. If he has the surgery now, he plays compromise and risks further injury. Or if he plays Origin and gets the surgery after, then he's in a situation where he won't be fit for round 1 for the Knights.
Yeah, and he
So
prolongs
we're
the
going to see
preseason and all that.
exactly, and we're going to see a lot of teams close the door, particularly in the future, with smaller or injuries like that Ponga's carrying. Players aren't at their peak fitness because they're tired from playing for the whole year. Some teams from the bottom 8 haven't played footy in over a month. That's a huge factor to factor in. I just think in the middle of the season, you've got over 2 months of footy before to stake your claim and show why you're worthy or why you should debut if you're a young gun. And it just makes sense, man, in every element. I mean, it's the highest watched TV show throughout the year in the middle of the season. So therefore, it's a win for players. It's a win for clubs. Well, not necessarily for clubs. It's a win for clubs in some way, but in some ways it's not because they lose their players through the
players.
year.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one there. I mean,
but I guess like you said, we touched on the speed of the game and stuff as well. So I guess you get that little break mid-season for the with the buys and whatnot. I think especially now with what we've seen this season with injuries and etc. I guess wherever we can have a little bit of a break. Or even where teams can have buys like we have generally in the past years, I think that's going to be a benefit as well. Whereas we're not going to, no way we're going to be able to sustain playing 19, 20 rounds straight. You know what I mean? It's not going to, in an ideal world, it's not going to work out. So I think in that terms where the game's going as well, I think when you have certain teams that can have buys in that period, that's going to benefit them as well and their players as well, having that little extra rest. So.
Just because this year's been so crazy and so different so far.
Exactly.
I really would have liked to have seen, after the regular 20 rounds, I would have liked to have seen every top 8 team get a week off, give them all a rest because it has to, it's been such a crazy 18 games in a row with no buys. And just because it's a COVID period and it's just such a strange world at the moment, have the bottom 8 teams play off for like a mini nines tournament over the weekend, so we still have entertainment. So that way the bottom 8 teams can still win something for the year, and your top 8 teams have a rest, so that in turn your finals football is a higher quality, which will, that works for broadcasters. They still have a product that will probably get more eyes than they have, rested players for a better product come finals time. It works for the players. It would have been fun to do at the very least.
Because they were talking about it, right? And now kind of shut it down. Because I think is it the AFL that does that? They have a week. They give a week off. They have a week off just before the final start, and they wanted to try to implement that in the NRL as well. But I think they kind of shut that door down. Because there was a discussion a couple of weeks ago about that, whether they should introduce once kind of the top 8 is solidified, then give them a week off and then kind of crack into the kind of the finals footy. So any niggles, injuries, rest, and like you said, the quality of football increase as well, right? Especially at that time of the year, people are probably people are walking around probably with little injuries and whatnot as well. So. Man, just to kind of, I guess, end it in a sense, where do you, for me, I've been telling people that I believe, especially rugby league, is kind of in my eyes, it's kind of on the rise. Not that it wasn't on the rise before, but I feel like now with a lot of things, like I've been very in tune with what happens around the world in terms of the culture and entertainment with Europe and America and how they kind of do their, how their athletes kind of interact with, whether it's sponsorships with promotion and all that. And I found this year, especially in last year, that with rugby league athletes now, there is a lot more interaction, a lot more sponsorships, a lot more of that, that aspect of the game. Whereas before, kind of, you didn't really know much, till the footy kind of came on. But now you're kind of getting a lot more of that, and that's helping monetize and grow the game, and especially get athletes more of a kind of exposure, if that makes sense. But I find the game is actually, I don't know, it's getting to a really good place where it's almost going to be like, when we sit down and watch, obviously, the NBA finals, and we sit down and watch the NFL finals. And I feel like rugby league is going to get to a point where it's like people around the world are going to look at this and, this product in Australia. I know it's all around the world, but, NRL is, the cream of the crop, right? So, and I just feel like it's getting there slowly. what are your thoughts on it? And what are your thoughts on additional teams, man? I know there's been talk about a second Brisbane team as well. Do you think that NRL, whether it's now or whether it's moving forward, should start looking at expansion, or are we pretty settled with what we have at the moment?
Yeah, I think we should definitely be looking to probably get up to 18 teams, a second one in Brisbane, and maybe a team in Perth or the west coast of Australia after that. That way, it adds a little bit more to finals football. As we saw, like the Cronulla Sharks finished playing finals football this year without defeating a top 8 team, without having a positive for and against. They were literally smack bang on zero. And it was just purely because they were just on the halfway mark. Whereas if we had 18 teams, you'd have to be a little bit better than halfway to, pardon me, to make the finals. So I think getting to 18 teams makes sense. And then on what you were saying prior to that, yeah, I think we're definitely headed in the right direction. I think if we want to get to sort of global dominance or a global sport, we need to start mirroring a lot of the things the NBA does. It just works. It's successful. The players have stories. They're allowed to be their own character or their own person. They're not controlled in what they say. Match footage is readily available everywhere. And that's why the NBA has literally achieved global dominance. Just for those two things. Players are accessible and they're able to be themselves. They're not judged for that. Whereas for comparison, that in the NRL, I feel we get a lot of cliche, full credit to the boys, or I'm not sure about that, or, blanket answers. Match footage, heavily restricted by the NRL. You just can't touch it. And that's because Fox Sports and Channel 9, the main broadcasters, pay so much for it to be that way. But the NRL actually stands to gain more by taking 20 million less per year to make it so that they own the footage to everything whilst it's live. But as soon as that moment's passed in time, that footage can be posted absolutely anywhere. And that in turn is going to allow big hits to be shared everywhere. The NRL want this. There's a reason why when small creators on Instagram make edits, they shut their pages down and delete their content. But when SportsCenter, a massive ESPN-owned company from the US, share an NRL big hit, the NRL's there commenting in the comments section like, oh my God, this was a great hit. There's more here. Because hold on, you just shut down some 12-year-old's kid because he was trying to help grow the game. So they want it, but they need to stop being greedy. They need to take a little bit less and understand that short-term, yes, that affects them, but long-term, the growth of the game will be significantly larger if they allow that.
I think they also got to understand that they need to rely and be dependent on people like us to share it, because our reach, we all have different reaches, right? We all have different networks and people that, that we interact with. And the more people that post it, the more the exposure, and you're getting people from other sports. Like, you only got to look at, just even Russell Crowe's influence of getting a lot of the American celebrities involved in rugby league because of the Rabbitohs, right? Like, I always laugh about like Snoop Dogg walking around with a Rabbitohs jersey, you know what I mean? And like all these guys, and it just shows you like, and then, obviously, whether it was this year, it would have been this year, and even last year, there were a few big hits that kind of went viral. And even if you look at a lot of the rugby league athletes that are getting opportunities to go and train on in NFL, it's because they've had exposure and seeing what our league boys are doing and thinking, fuck, these guys are weapons, like, you know what I mean? And and that's kind of created opportunities for them to go and try out. Whether it was Hayne or Holmes, or, and that's just the beginning. In an ideal world, man, another 5-6 years, even 10 years, going to look so much more different, right? Like, the network and the bridge with them being able to see what we're doing and et cetera is going to only increase. And, and then we're going to be in a situation where we're like, fuck, okay, we can't lose these guys. You know what I mean? We can't lose these guys to other sports, because, that's the flip side, right? The flip side is they see how good these athletes are and how well trained they are. And they're like, well, I'm going to fucking try to pick them, take them, bring them over here and whatnot. So, I think that's always been the setback with NRL, is just the exposure. Like, it's such a great game. And I just feel like if people got to, if it got the right exposure, then you would have, and we need that. And that's kind of the conversation I was having, was that we need that exposure, and we need to branch out and tap into different industries and whatnot, and get into these other, massive sports, like you said, ESPN and SportsCenter watching us, because they got a massive platform, man. You know what I mean? They're the premier, like, cream of the crop ESPN. You know, they got the NBA, they got the UFC, they got all these guys that, covering all these different sports that are global. You're not even talking at a national level, you're talking global level. So yeah, that's pretty dope, man. But listen, man, I won't take too much of your time. I appreciate you giving me, giving you a morning, man. And keep doing your thing, Clarky. Appreciate you, man. I really do. I appreciate what you're doing, and I'm sure everyone that follows you appreciates what you're doing as well for the sport. I just wanted to. It was something that I really wanted to do, was to just sit and chat and kind of tap into your head as to kind of what drove you down this path of wanting to do. Do all these things, with Rugby League, with your Clarkey's column and whatnot. And yeah, I've never really seen anyone kind of tap into you as a person. And that's kind of what my podcast is about, is, the man behind all that. And, I just wanted to kind of get to know you and what drove you to be so passionate about, doing all these things with Rugby League. And I commend you, man. I commend you. We need it. And I wish you nothing but the best. And I'm sure we'll touch base, man. It's something I would love to do every year with you, bro. If it works out, towards the end of the season when finals start, we can sit down and just reflect on the season and get your thoughts on, on the game and I guess some of the teams. And if there was a dark horse in this remaining series so far, who would you tap into, bro? Who would you think is gonna kind of pull through?
From the teams left, the dark horse would have to be the Rabbitohs. Cody Walker and Adam Reynolds, if they stay on fire, theoretically they could beat any team, but they'll have to go to the Panthers, which will be a very, very tough ask.
Yeah, fair enough. Appreciate you, bro. And thanks for tapping, coming in and having a chat. And yeah, man, I wish you all the best. And obviously once it's all done, I'll share it and make sure people can follow you on Instagram, and I know you're on Facebook as well, so I'll make sure I'll share the deets as well, man.
Awesome.
But yeah, I wish you all the best, brother. Thanks
for the comments, man. It was a pleasure.
No worries. Cheers, my brother. Thanks.